So this morning we're going to hear about the fantastic Lakes International Comic Art Festival, which Julie Tait is in charge of and runs. Richard Foster also has a role to play, as do many other people. And I think it takes place in the autumn. So this is just a kind of before they get too embroiled in the machinations of all the detail and organisation. And we'll also hear about how it's actually a year-round programme. The Comic Art Festival. It's not just about the weekend in Bowness this year. And, you know, I think also Julie will talk to us about comics, why they matter. It's not just about the Beano and Whoopi, which are the two that I used to take as a small child. I used to take one of the kind of military action man ones as well for a while, I remember. Not really me at all, but that's what I used to take, but full of drawings. And then Cockermouth Live, which Cards on the Table, I'm helping to organise this year. Chris Bridgman is the chair of the organising committee. It's in its 13th or 14th year, so it's a success, Cockermouth Live. Bob Pritchard also had has had over the years a massive role to play and is still very much involved, although I think he's trying to wheedle his way out of it now. So Cockermouth Live takes place not this weekend, but next weekend. And we're going to hear about how that's all coming together and what it's all about. I think the test match highlights do count as cultural, Derek, just looking at your message in chat there. And where my art used to beat, maybe Heart by Sebastian Faulks. Yeah, it's Sebastian Faulks. So once you've written a book like Birdsong, how do you write another one? But he's written all sorts of things since Birdsong. I've not read that one, but Derek is highly recommending Where My Used to Beat by Sebastian Faulks. Thank you, Derek. Is it Heart or Ert? I suspect it's Heart, not sure. Heart, thank you. Right, so without further ado, let's cross to Julie. Where are you, Julie? It looks very nice where you are, but where are you in the county? I'm assuming you're in the county?
In Bowness.
In Bowness, okay. So Julie, Amy's going to pull up your slides shortly, and the floor is yours to tell us all about the Lakes International Comic Art Festival.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. I'm going to romp through quite a lot of slides, actually, as Tom pointed out to me earlier on. There are about 30, but I'm not going to dwell on any of them for a particularly long time, and just so that I can hopefully take questions at the end as well. So it's going to be a bit about the festival, a little bit of a party political broadcast about comics, and then a little bit about the sorts of things that we're doing year round as well. So I'm also, I've not been brought up badly, so I'm not going to be impolite to Amy, but I'm just going to say next instead of next slide, please, Amy, because that will take at least half of the 15 minutes that are available to me. So I'm Julie Tait. I'm founder director of the festival. The festival takes place annually, now at the end of September, and it's in its 11th year. So up till last year, it was in Kendal. And then last year we moved to Bowness on Windermere for a number of reasons, really. One was we were doing a bit of a reset after 10 years of being on the planet. We felt like we needed to kind of make a new statement about who we were. Secondly, because we like to make life really difficult for ourselves. And thirdly, because we are, to be honest, quite sick of the American guests that come and say, where's the lake? So we've put the lake into the Lakes International Comic Art Festival as a rather cheesy PR headline that we used. We're trying to emulate a European style festival with this festival. So taking over a whole town, making it on fete. We're definitely trying to appeal to new audiences, not just to comics fans. So we're not like a Comic Con. And we're also covering unashamedly all genres of comics, which I'll come on to in a little bit. The festival has the elements that you might expect, such as, main events program and stuff. But we do a windows trail through businesses in the village. We have a little LICAF, which is an under 12 zone. We have exhibitions, blah, 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 blah. And we also have a fringe element now as well, which is growing. Last year, we had 27 countries represented at the festival. So we are truly international. But we also have a year-round programme, which focuses on a wide range of things. But perhaps the most important elements for us are looking at literacy and comics, looking at autism and comics, and also looking at how comics can tackle key issues such as the environment, climate change, etc. Next. Okay, so this is our rally cry. Comics can change the world, which might sound a bit pretentious, pompous, or just preposterous, really. But I guess we work, and I'm sure all of you do, on the basis that, you know, to have big results, you need to have big ambition. So hopefully that's encapsulated in this slide. But I just wanted to go slightly off piece, sorry, rather flippantly, with the alternative to being bold and ambitious. So if you could give me the next slide. This is actually anonymised. It is actually a real slogan by a local authority not too far from here, who obviously set their goals particularly high. And the second slide, next one, please, is a mantra from one of my favourite characters, Homer Simpson: trying is the first step to failure. So that's my pathetic attempt at a motivational speech, I guess. Next slide. But seriously, comics can change the world. Well, we have a number of reasons why we think this might be possible. First of all, the creators that work in the comics field are particularly prolific, and they represent every part of society. In fact, many of the, as we call them, protected characteristics are overly represented in comics in comparison with the percentage of in the population, which is really interesting for us. And also they're a particularly global group in that they tend to work in studios on their own, so they're very active on social media and they've got very strong global networks. We're evangelical about what they can do, and that picture there, by the way, is me on the right being evangelical, in case you weren't sure. There is a cricket bat as well, so that's obviously particularly relevant. And we believe, and this has come through research and evidence as well, that we can improve the life chances of young people, as well as reaching new groups through culture. And I've put this bit, it's not all about me, because there's a bit of a relevance as to why this festival kind of exists and why I'm so interested in comics. I've been lucky to, I think I've been lucky to work in the arts for more than 30 odd years, in every nook and cranny. Quite quickly got tired of what I see anyway as empty rhetoric by a lot of arts organisations about being inclusive and being accessible. I think they've often been barking up the wrong tree. So I found my place eventually in street and outdoor arts, and set up Mintfest in Kendal, which ran for a number of years, and then the first iteration of Lakes Alive, which was part of the London 2012 Olympics. And I kind of could see the sort of transformational power of that particular art form. When the Olympics finished, was looking for something else similar to do, and comics came on the radar. My son has Asperger's and is really into comics, and that's literally where it started, the rest being history. And all I'll say is that the principles of the two are very similar. The only advantage with comics is I don't have to worry about the rain anymore. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is the pitch, and I won't be dwelling on the subsequent slides quite so much, but this is an important one for us, I think. So comics are a medium, and they're not a genre, and we've been working really hard to try and shift an understanding about what comics are. In France, they're called the ninth art. They're not a subgenre of literature nor of visual arts, they are a medium. In this country, as you probably know, they're either seen as rather childish, or they're seen as a platform or a stepping stone rather to proper books. Whereas actually we know that many people who are readers actually choose this medium over others. In terms of the Arts Council, it's been quite a battle. When we were given our recent MPO status, it was to fill a gap in literature. So we're working quite hard to turn that around, really. And, you know, in Europe, creators are rock stars. So we want to try and achieve a similar status for comics here. Some of the great things about it, which will be obvious to you guys, is it is essentially visual storytelling. So it's a familiar vehicle for processing information, learning, and being entertained. Simplicity is an important thing. Comics are actually quite a simple medium to make, but also they can often be quite simple to consume, and there are many wordless comics out there, for example. And I know this phrase gets bandied around all the time, contemporary and relevant, but actually bearing in mind how prolific visuals are in our everyday life and how comics can tackle quite easily contemporary issues, it's dynamite, really. And we also know that comics are keeping at least along with the curve, maybe not ahead of it in terms of technology, experimenting with AI and AR and all sorts of things. And also it's cool for many young people. It's a cool genre. You know, if you think about manga, which is one, I say a genre of comics, and the links to anime, which is the animated version of comics, it's growing and growing in popularity. Next. We also talk about comics as unlocking the imagination. For those who know a bit more about the technical way comics are actually made and work, there are panels and there are gaps between the panels, and those are called gutters. And it's not a seamless sort of sequence of images often, there are often gaps, and in those gaps, people can make their own connections, their own conclusions, and really use their imaginations. And also we know, particularly with children, that their vocabulary can be significantly increased through comics because quite complex words are sometimes more easily understood through the visuals that accompany them. Next. Empathy, again, is an obvious, I suppose, bonus really when you're using visuals. This is a well-known young adult comic, which has recently been a series and won several awards. Next. And this is an image, sorry, it's a rather startling one, from a comic anthology we did with some Philippine and UK artists about climate change. And I would argue strongly, and I'm happy for people to argue against, that it will be very difficult in any other medium to get across the emotional sort of complexity and power of what's going on here in any other medium in such a short, I suppose, space of time. It's basically 1 or 2 pages and they speak volumes. Next. And similarly this one, which is by Rachel Smith, who's a UK artist, which is a book called Wired Up Wrong, and it's about mental health. This is her anxiety about going outside. Next. Sorry, I'm getting higher and higher pitched, aren't I? And another thing that's been said about comics, it's the last bit of the pitch, I promise, is that the sequence of images kind of is irresistible. It drags you in, it sucks you in. And there have been suggestions most recently, which needs, I think, a research spotlight on it, that people, for example, with ADHD find it quite calming. Next. And going to the sort of other end of the spectrum, talking about nostalgia and older people as well, whatever old people means. This is Benoit Peters, who's a comic scholar from France, who's written a wonderful article about what makes comics so special, about how people like to relive their childhoods, or even if they're particularly into superhero comics, stay in their childhoods firmly for the rest of their lives. And the closest thing, he argues, to a comic in terms of how it can remind you of that innocent part of your life or even maintain it is a song. And it's a beautiful article. I'd highly recommend it if people are interested in reading it. Next. So this is a little bit about what we've been doing year round. We've been running a research project with the University of Manchester and others on the impact of comics on literacy, enjoyment of reading and well-being. And it's been a sort of proper quasi-experimental project. We've had control groups. It's all been a bit cruel, really. Some kids get a very complex, wonderful comics intervention, others get nothing at all, but a prize afterwards. And we were doing this in Abraham Moss Primary School in Manchester a couple of years ago. So it's a school where the families are predominantly speaking English as a second language, and a lot of the kids are on pupil premium. And they were given workshops, a comics library, and a weekly subscription of this wonderful comic here, The Phoenix, to their door. We did lots of interviews with parents, with children, also with the teachers. Next. And the results were really, really wonderful. Not just the technical literacy scores, which were impressive, but the fact that so many kids who we were told rarely picked up a book or even engaged with classroom activity were identifying as a reader, were actively seeking out books and becoming much more confident, happier and settled in the classroom and at home. Next. And these next 3 slides are quotes from some of the children. Bearing in mind the time, I'll perhaps hop, Amy, if it's okay, over this one and the next one and land on the 3rd quote. That's it. And this, I guess, kind of sums it up. That enjoyment of reading and the confidence that comes from that is really wonderful. So we have since then been running another project called Comics Potential, which is funded by Paul Hamlin Foundation. It's in its, well, coming to the end of its sort of first phase. and it's working with 2 schools in Barrow, primary schools in perhaps the most deprived parts of Barrow, and 2 special schools, one in Barrow and one in Kendal. So we should have more results in the next year or so. Next. The other thing I want to say about our year-round work, and you probably really can't read this, but it's on our website and it's interactive, so you can actually hone in on the different partnerships we have. But we have more than 35 partnerships now across the world, and this map's now actually out of date. We're just forming some new partnerships with, hopefully with the east of Africa and parts of South America. But these partnerships are alive, and we have kind of really sort of taken aback, I suppose, in a way, by how quickly globally we've made contacts, and we're doing major projects with the British Council, which I'll briefly talk about later. And when I was having a chat with Tom before this, I just want to say that throughout all of our work and in relation to the partnerships we have, we're really open to sharing those, talking to people if they're interested in making connections in other parts of the world, because we're not just making contacts with comics organisations, we're actually making contacts with cultural institutes. So we know how those institutes work, what they're looking for, how they can fund artists, for example, to come to this country, how artists from this country can maybe get funded to go to another. So I kind of we open our arms, I guess, to people who might want a little bit of information or advice or whatever about that. Next. A big project of ours, I mentioned environment earlier on, started in 2021 with 10 Years to Save the World, which has a website. Obviously, we need to change the name of it now because it's 8 years to save the world. But it's a project with Philippine and UK artists. This is one of the artists we work with from the UK, her image here. And it was funded by the British Council. And it went to COP26 and was one of the British Council pitches for creativity being a route to making particularly young people politically active about this issue. Next. And we're now in the phase of preparing an anthology for COP28, which is in Abu Dhabi. Again, funded by the British Council. It's called Ink to Action, and it's 13 short comics from artists from the Middle East and North Africa. So Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Lebanon, and Morocco. Did I say Morocco? Anyway, so it's going to be previewed at the festival at the end of September this year and then launched, as I said, at COP28. So we have a very interesting and developing relationship with the British Council. Next. Which includes, this is not our title, I would never have thought of this, it's the British Council's, but we are piloting a project which will bring 2 people from the Middle East and North Africa to Windermere for a month in September this year to learn more about how we here organise festivals and events, and hopefully go back to their countries and implement some of what they've learned. The Egyptian guy who's coming is actually already a director of an animation festival in Cairo. And this is going to be a model that's used for the British Council, hopefully across the world. We will also have 2 people coming in 2024. Next. And just a final example, really, because I'm picking things out here, of a new collaboration which literally has just been launched in Bolton, because we don't just work in Cumbria, we are increasingly working outside of the county. We like to see ourselves as a sort of national agency, really. And we're working with a consortium of 8 libraries, which includes Library in Barrow, with a touring exhibition aimed at young people called Make Mine Manga. And it's all about Japanese comics, why they're such a hit in the UK and in other European countries. The sales are rising exponentially, comics. And it's a concept, we hope, it's a touring, flexible, modular exhibition, which we think we might be able to replicate, but with another theme, with looking at pop music and comics, for example, for the next one. Next. I'm nearly there, by the way. This here are some examples of the panels. They're actually pull-up banners, sorry, that we're using in the exhibition. So we look at why manga is so big in Japan. Next. Individual artists, Junko Mizuno, who's actually visited our festival a number of times. Next. Look at techniques, different kinds of manga. Next. Again, this is an alternative form of manga called Geikika. Next. Another individual artist. Next. and all about manga in Britain as well. We have our own kind of tradition of manga, which again is growing quite interestingly. Next. And this is the consortium, and this kind of really encapsulates how we work and how we want to work, which is multi venue or whatever consortium. Libraries are a very natural partner for us. So working across the Liverpool City region, in Manchester, and also in Cumbria. Next. And with the touring exhibition, again, this is a concept we'll replicate. We do CPD. We have a comics laureate that we appoint every couple of years, whose job it is to advocate for comics. We've developed for this exhibition a toolkit for social media and also additional activities that can be run around the exhibition, which will travel with the exhibition, helping librarians to come up with ideas for things they can do that would be interesting to young people. And there's also a library of comics, manga comics, and a feedback mechanism as well. And that is pretty much it. Next. And I know that you have to try and finish on a kind of motivational quote, and you shot, we drop has already been taken. So this is my next favourite one. Opportunities don't happen, you create them. There you go. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry, that was a bit of a rapid romp. Richard will probably go, no, you've misrepresented us.
Well, Julie, that was fascinating. I've got all sorts of questions, but Richard, do you want to just chip in, add anything to what Julie has inspirationally already said to us?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Julie said. I mean, I didn't, when I started working for the festival, I didn't really know anything about comics, apart from my interest in Japanese culture, and that was the route into the whole subject. And over the last few years, I've just realised the huge potential. And you know, you just have to go to France to see how different it is there. 40% of all books sold in France are comics. And they're used in the culture in every way, from, you know, bank advertising to you know, fast food outlets. Everybody understands the language of comics and how they engage people in unique ways, and I think that's what I find most exciting.
I think he's just encapsulated my 15 minutes of ramble in one sentences.
And Richard, you're a printmaker. You draw. I mean, do you ever dabble in comic drawing?
No, I'm not talented enough.
And Julie, tell me a bit more about your own personal. So the reason that the Lakes International Comic Art Festival is where it is because you're based in Cumbria, right? There's no specific Cumbrian comic culture that makes it a natural place necessarily for the festival to be here. Is that right?
It's completely right, but actually, just to say, I mean, my experience is the same here with Mintfest as well. Yeah. The open-armedness, if that's actually a term, of the people in Cumbria to something like this is extraordinary. It would possibly, arguably, get lost in a big city like Liverpool or somewhere else. There's a real appreciation of something contemporary and different happening in the county. I think that's just an important thing to say.
Yeah, well, that's refreshing to hear, because I think you talked about 27 different countries are represented at the festival this year. Do you find it difficult to attract, you know, people from around the world to come to Bowness or to previous locations?
No. I mean, the actual audience that comes from an international point of view is relatively small. I mean, you know, realistically, we're not expecting a big international audience. We're interested in getting a big local audience, and then obviously the national one that exists in Britain. But in terms of guests, not at all difficult. We've had the most brilliant, high-profile guests coming. The attraction of the Lakes is undoubtedly part of their decision-making process. But in terms of other festivals, I think it's right to say, Rich, isn't it? They're all a little bit confused and perplexed by what we do. Because the other thing that we do play around a lot with the medium and the way it's presented, because as we all know, you know, let me compare it with literary festivals, it can be really quite boring, sorry. There are only limited ways people think in which you can present, you know, the creators and what they do. So we mess around, we use a good old dollop of black British humour, and Viz comics at every single festival to disrupt everything. So I think those sorts of things attract people. And I mean, this year we have for the first time formally got the biggest festival pretty much in the world that's recognised for the quality in France coming represented at the festival. And we're holding a meeting of approximately 16 different international festivals, Quebec, Mexico, etc., East Africa. They're coming to Bo'ness. Sadly, it's a bit lost on the town council.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
interesting also, Julie, you've not actually told us when it is yet.
Oh, yeah. It's the 29th of September to the 1st of October.
29th September.
Oh, thank you, Jane.
And I'm also interested to yeah, so Jane, yeah, you draw, we draw. I like that. That's a nice sort of phrase to use. Do you find that, you know, I'm quite interested in your personal story, Julie, as to how you ended up doing this, because you said you were kind of, you know, worked in the arts for your whole career, whatever, and you got into this. You've got a child, I think you said with autism or Asperger's.
Yeah, it's 5 now.
And just tell us a bit more about, I think that's fascinating that you've hinted at about how comics can assist and help and be a natural piece of sort of territory for young people and older people who have those conditions. So just tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know, I think we all know, all of us sitting around this virtual room, that, you know, there are particular kinds of personalities and traits which sometimes align with certain art forms. Certainly with comics and associated art forms of gaming, perhaps animation a bit less, there are a high proportion of people who are on the spectrum. I mean, I have to say now that obviously one of the trendy things now is the neurodiverse thing. And when I say trendy, I'm actually not being cynical. It's a thing now, isn't it? But we're all neurodiverse. I'm interested in autism. I'm interested in, personally, I'm not talking Richard on behalf necessarily of the festival, of the pervasive disorder which exists that people have to live with and they can't escape from, they can't function in society. And that definitely applies to my son, for example. But they seem to thrive in an environment such as comics. And we are also now trying to actually put programs in place to support creators who want to be, well, artists who are autistic, because actually it's really, really, really complex. It starts before people even leave the house as to whether they can, for example, go and do a training session or whatever. We've tried running pilot projects, workshops where, you know, we have 6 people, but 2 turn up because they can't even get on the bus without having an issue and having to go back home. So bearing in mind that autistic people are the least employed people in society, which is shocking, we think that through comics, we can bring these people out of the woodwork, we can explore their creativity. There are some extraordinary autistic creators out there. And also we can give a safe space to people, the audiences and our volunteers. We have a volunteer cohort, which is actually, I think for the county, unusually young and very skewed towards either autism or people with mental health problems. So it's seen as a safe space. I remember at the brewery, Richard, the staff always commenting on how polite and low key and deferential the audiences were. You couldn't get a better behaved audience. And I know that sounds a bit, flippant, but yeah, it is very close to my heart.
Okay, and just speaking about the volunteers, it's part of the Helping Hands project, which is taking place across Cumbria, and we've got a couple of people on the call who are involved in that this morning. You're collaborating there, aren't you, as well, I think? Yes, that's Richard and Carol, who's the other member of our team, are looking at ways in which we can be a part of that amazing program. So and again, reaching out to people that perhaps wouldn't normally think about volunteering. Kate's got her hand up very politely.
I just think it's really important that an organisation that wants to reach out to people who are autistic is led by somebody who fundamentally understands what autism is all about. Because my experience, and I also have at least one daughter with autism, possibly 2. No, I definitely have 2 daughters. What I mean is the space feels the second. The older one is less clear. But I don't think enough people leading organisations understand autism, and therefore anything that is generated by way of support by that organisation is limited in its effectiveness. And I think really getting under the skin of what autism is and how it affects people's every day and will always affect their every day is really, really, really important. And I'm fascinated by why comics are so interesting and such a safe place for so many autistic people. I really want to find out more about that. Richard, I have a pile of comics behind me that Richard brought along to our house not so long ago. But I think there's so much more that I want to understand as a way of perhaps supporting my own daughter, whose future, who knows, without better support.
Yeah, well, we also, sorry, Richard, I'll say one quick thing. We are actually also, I didn't mention this in the presentation, quite heavily involved with research, and we are connected with universities, academics who are looking at certain things, and that includes autism and visual storytelling as a thing. It's something we would definitely like to go further with, so that we have almost neurological scientific data, evidence that we can cite. But at the moment, it's not a hunch. We can see it in front of us. Autistic people connect with comics for a whole range of reasons. It's a solo often activity which suits their needs. And yeah, it's a powerful way for them to actually reach out to the world and tell their own stories. Richard, sorry.
One last thought from Richard, and then we shall move on. Richard.
Yeah, just to say that we've been doing a project with artist residencies in partnership with 3 other organisations across Europe. And one of the artists, Panka Jislova, has created an amazing comic about being autistic and a female creative. It's amazing. It's 40 pages long, sits in that kind of territory between infographic and comic. And she'll be at the festival this year. We'll be exhibiting some of that work. And when it gets published, I think it's the most insightful and easily digested information about what it's like to live and create as an autistic person. So I'd recommend it, and it'll be exhibited at the Jetty this year.
Thank you, Richard. Julie, thank you for such an inspirational chat this morning. So just to remind people of the dates, because Julie wasn't very good at that. So one thing she wasn't very good at. So it's the 29th of September to the 1st of October at Bowness on Windermere. So I intend to get down there. I've never been before. I intend to get down there and just find out what it's all about. And I just think it's a great thing that you do, and it's fantastic that it's in Cumbria, and we need to help get word out about what it is that this is all about. So thank you very much, Julie, for that this morning. Do stick around.
Pleasure, and thank you to Amy.
Amy did the slides beautifully, much better than I used to do them. Thank you very much. Right, it's 10 past 10, so we've got 20 minutes left. So, and by the way, hello Ian, nice to have you with us. Let's cross to Cockermouth, which is where I live, and we're going to hear about Cockermouth Live, which is a great community festival performance across town. Chris Bridgman has taken up the mantle of being chair of the organising committee, and we've got a few slides to show you what goes on in Cockermouth, and I'm going to hand over the reins to Chris.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've enjoyed Comic Fest a couple of times because my niece is a graphic artist, among other things, and produced a gorgeous, I'd be interested in the terminology about comics and graphic novels, but we haven't got time to discuss that. Anyway, yeah, it's an area which I know far too little about, and I'm keen to learn more. Yeah, so going from an impressively, massively international festival to a very local festival, really. Again, Amy, if you'll forgive me, I'll just say next because I've got quite a lot of slides to get through. Yeah, it's been going for I think certainly over 10 years now. Bob Pritchard was very much one, if not the founding motivator of the festival, and the focus is very much on local talent. It's certainly we welcome people to come and enjoy it from wherever, but the performers are largely from in and about Cockermouth and certainly around about Cumbria. Last year we hit a sort of crucial point where the people that had been involved in organising it had been doing it for a long time and for various reasons were kind of needing to stop because they were either had health issues or grandchildren issues or whatever. And so there came a point where we said, look, if this is going to carry on, we need some more people to help organise it. And joyously, lots of people came forward, including at least 2 people who are on this call. Tom's mentioned he's involved, as is Kate. So we got a vibrant, refreshed organising committee, and we've got a much bigger festival this year. It goes right across town. Next, and venues stretch from Cockermouth Castle, which is not normally open to the public, but Lord and Lady Egremont have very kindly allowed us access to their little country pad. It's got a lovely sunken lawn in the middle of it, which is great for performances. And we're going to have a marquee in there, so at least the performers are protected if the weather isn't ideal. And next, we go from the castle to little coffee shops like the Moon and Sixpence, which has kind of curated its own programme through the weekend. So they're starting off on Friday with small performances, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And as Tom mentioned, this is next weekend. So starting a week today, Cockermouth Live activity will be starting. Next, we also have performances in pubs, such as the Bitter End. And the programme is massively eclectic. There's all sorts of music. Next, we've got quite a lot of brass bands this year. I think all of them are performing up at the castle because it's a good space, and you won't get your ears blown out by the immense brassy sounds. Here are 2 of them, and the mighty Cockermouth Mechanics Band will feature, as is traditional. Next, we also have, I think, at least 3 ukulele bands. You may recognise somebody in here. We name the guilty parties. Yeah, I think at least 3 ukulele bands. Next, we also have classical music, and again, a familiar face. The Pat Castle Wind Quintet is unique among quintets in having 4.5 members, because obviously you only need half of a French horn. But there are other classical and as an early music group that's associated with the U3A that traditionally performs. Next, there's a range of choirs. This one is, I've just chosen this picture because it shows Wordsworth House Garden, which is another of the venues, the National Trust property, which is the place where William Wordsworth was born, and it's got this rather gorgeous garden that some of the performances happen in. And this is Dave Camlin's 2 choirs, Sing Out and Wild Chorus, but there are other community choirs, Castlegate Singers, etc., etc. Next, there's also rock of various sorts, people with electric guitars, and all that kind of thing. Here are a few of them. Next, there's also included, so I should say, on the kind of rock music front, there's a little curated programme up at the castle of emerging Cumbrian talent, which has been selected by Tom Salmon, who used to be the BBC Introduces guy, but he's now promoting his own account. There's stuff for all ages. Fairly famous family, very well established street theatre outfit will be doing street theatre on the Saturday with their Anyone for Tennis, so we're hooking into the Wimbledon vibe, and that will be extremely funny and engaging. And also for families, next there is at Wordsworth House, Wordsworth Grasmere is offering a couple of their outreach activities. The Rucksack of Rhymes for really tiny people, and Bugs and Butterflies, which they kind of tie in William and Dorothy Wordsworth work with kind of thinking about the planet, and there's lots of songs. You have to provide your own very cute small people, I'm afraid. Though that is free, but you should kind of reserve a place because places are limited. Where are we? Yes. Next, this is just a ragbag collection of other things, because there is so much there. There's some great jazz, there's poetry, there's theatre, there's shanties, and all sorts of music, as I've said. Next, This is one of the venues, Recreate and Make, which is run by Maggie Turner Edgar, who has been seen in this room on occasion. This is the shop come workshop space that she runs, and this will have some performances, but will also have an opportunity to join in and do stuff. There is quite a few opportunities to join in and do stuff next. So, for instance, there won't be sewing, I think, but at Recreate and Make, you can come along and find out how to make new things out of waste fabrics. There's an opportunity to try Scottish country dancing. There's an opportunity to try printmaking, and there is an opportunity to learn how to play the ukulele, because plainly there is not enough ukulele in the world. Next. As I said, all of the above are free gigs, but we do have a couple of sort of headline, high-profile, professional performances from elsewhere. On the Friday night, this sinister-looking pair is actually the lovely Boo Hewardine and Scottish musician Jill Jackson. Boo Hewardine, particularly very well known in this kind of folk circuit, and he's written songs that have been performed by an incredibly long list of very high profile performers. That's the Kergate Centre on the Friday evening. Next, and on the Saturday, traditionally there's a big blowout high profile band there, and this is Edward II, amazing reggae, sort of reggae crossed with English folk outfit from Manchester, which I'm seeing some nods. Yes, that will be amazing. Kergate will be a flat floor, so plenty of opportunity for dancing. And next, this is not a high profile professional outfit, but a wonderful band, the Cockermouth Community Orchestra, which has always traditionally wound things up on the Sunday afternoon, but because we've expanded, they're winding things up on the Sunday evening. In Christchurch, which is where this was taken, and there's also going to be some involvement from Dave Cameron's choirs as well, so that's going to be a spectacular finale, and you do have to cough up some money for that. Tickets available from Billy Bowman's The Amazing Music Shop in the middle of town, if you don't already know it. So I would strongly encourage people from all four corners of Cumbria to come and join us next weekend. It will be amazing. And yes, huge thanks to Tom, Kate, Bob, and several other people who aren't here, but have put immense amounts of effort into getting the thing running. Bob may want to correct me or add some thoughts to this. We can just pop onto the next slide to acknowledge the fact that it is all voluntarily run, but we rely on funding, which we've managed to secure from all sorts of people. Thank you very much indeed. And next, the final slide will just give you the web address, where there is lots of information, most of it fairly accurate. And you can discover and see more things there. Thank you very much. Do come along.
Thank you, Chris. You've romped through those slides beautifully, and I won't say much more other than it's going to be a fantastic weekend. A lot of effort's got into it. The weather's looking okay. Usually it chucks it down, but it's looking okay. So Cockermouth will be the place to be. Not this weekend, but next, well, this weekend, obviously, but next weekend too. And it's a really good example of, I think we reckon that over 500 to 600 local people perform over the weekend. So it's a fantastic community occasion. And so, you know, sometimes that's absolutely what the arts and culture sector in Cumbria should be about, as well as mixing in with some professional musicians as well. So looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun. And
I think it's worth noting that it's kind of, you know, the music, the people performing, that is a real mix of amateurs, professionals, semi-professionals, sometimes mingling together in the same groups. So you know, it is a splendidly eclectic gathering in of all talents.
Talking of amateurs, my little wind quintet is performing a world premiere of a piece that my lovely friend Phil Wood has written for my 50th birthday, which is a theme and variations on the theme of Ilkley Moor Bartat. And it's a beautiful piece of music. So that in itself is worth a trip over here if ever there was one.
World premiere. Bob, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to fit everything into even 10 minutes. Maggie Turner Edgar with the organisation called Evan West
Yes.
has organised an exhibition of art in shop windows, which is running at the moment and runs up till the festival weekend. So if you come along Cockermouth and drift down the main street, you'll come across all sorts of really interesting and good artworks in shop windows, quite a lot of which is for sale. So that's a whole, what we tried to do originally with Cockermouth Live was to say, yeah, we'll have a festival. If you want to join in, tell us what you're going to do and we'll put it in there. In fact, of course, it all requires a lot more organisation than that. And anybody who's had anything to do with festivals will know, will understand why I've spent almost all of the past week trying to put together a stewarding rota for 2 days and about 50 events with inadequate people. I feel rather like, well, inadequate numbers of people. I feel rather like the NHS, you know, trying to find beds for people. But I think it'll all be all right on the night.
Excellent, thank you, Bob. And Phil, yeah, nice to mention the Wordsworth House Poets Out Loud session at 2:30. It's a lovely venue for it, and there's going to be some, the Poets Out Loud meet every month in Cockermouth, and there's some beautiful stuff that's written by local people, so that'll be worth going to as well. Lovely. We've got about 6 minutes left. Chris, I'm going to cross back to you because I think there's mention of some more of the genre-specific sessions coming up.
Indeed, just swapping hats into my CACN role. Yes, you may have heard mention that we're looking at putting together opportunities for people working with it. Obviously, this call is very inclusive for anybody who wants to come along. But we thought it'd be useful to create opportunities for people working within different genres and different sectors of the arts and culture ecology across Cumbria to get together and share experiences, share knowledge, raise issues, identify challenges, and hopefully think about ways of dealing with them. So we had the first one of these for the music sector a couple of weeks ago, which didn't have a huge number of people attending, but there was a lot of enthusiasm and bright ideas coming out of it. I went, can I share screen? I should have sent this to because if I
just
can,
bear with me, Chris. I'll make
yeah,
it.
okay. Or I could maybe, I should have emailed this. I just wanted to, there's a whole long list of ideas that came out of that first music sector meeting, which was kindly facilitated by Dave Camlin and Julie Jarman.
Should be okay to share now.
Okay, I'll see if I can do this. Bear with me. I'll just share screen. And if I can find one of the, there we go. Yeah, there we go. So I'll let you read that while I, can everybody see that? Yeah, don't know how I get rid of this.
Yeah, we can see that, Chris.
Okay. Okay, so as I say, lots of ideas bubbling away there. And we're looking to run a second music sector session. But in the interests of making sure as many people as possible can attend that, there's a doodle poll asking people to let us know which of several dates late July they could possibly make. So that's going out through a newsletter imminently, and we'll get stuff up on the website as well. But we do have dates lined up for the visual arts sector and the theatre and performing arts that's not music. So these are, I'll just remind myself, coming up in, the first one is in July I'm just not going to rely on my memory because that would be extremely foolish, is going to be Wednesday the 26th of July, a session on theatre and other performance, which is being facilitated by Stephanie Screet, well known in these parts, and also by Liz Stevenson. It's being offered in collaboration with the Cumbrian Creatives Network that Theatre by the Lake runs. And actually before that is the visual arts one, which is going to be on Thursday, the 19th of July. And that's going to be facilitated by Al Critchlow and Eleanor Cheney, again, some of which you may know. And the idea is not that these are kind of formally chaired sessions, but we just wanted to put some people in place to kind of smooth things along, manage the conversation, encourage people to contribute. So if you work in any or all of those areas, please spread the word among your colleagues and contacts. And it's completely free to join, but you would need to let Amy know that you're coming so we can get the Zoom codes out to people.
Thanks, Chris. So we'll put all those details and those dates onto the website and onto social media in the next few days, so look out for those. And as I said, as Chris said, part of the point of the network is just to pull people together and encourage collaboration in the way that Julie beautifully illustrated all those collaborators that take part, those regional collaborators that take part in the festival, the comic festival. It's about collaboration often, this stuff, and that's part of what the network's put on the planet to do, to get people to know who it is to talk to and possibly work together to make better things happen. Thank you very much, Chris. You've been a busy man. We're going to conclude now. Next week, we're going to hear about another rollout of the historic Quarter Arts Festival in Carlisle from Nick Turner. And fingers crossed, we're going to have some award winners, some Cumbrian award winners who have just won a national award for something. I'll tell you more about that when it is confirmed, but some inspirational people, fingers crossed, for next week. That's it for this week. Thank you so much to Julie for a great presentation. Thank you to Chris for telling us all about Cockermouth Live, and thank you to everybody who's come on the call this morning. I can just a second source on Derek's choice of the Moon and Sixpence having the best coffee in Cumbria, if not the universe. I think he may be right. Since the demise of the wagon van, the coffee wagon van outside Penrith railway station, Casbar Coffee, the Moon and Sixpence is very much my place to go to for the finest flat white in Cumbria. I bet places like Ulverston are probably full of coffee shops that do nice coffee as well, and probably George has got some place in his part of the world where he goes to. But for me, the Moon and Sixpence is literally a 5-minute walk away from where I live, and it does me very well. And they're also very nice people in there, and sometimes they play nice music too. Thank you very much to everybody for this morning. Have a great weekend. See you next time.